Now, some common posting issues. I mentioned this dialog here on the left. If you go to the Program tab in the CAM plugin, select Post, you'll see the Select Post Processor dialog. Again, I got highlighted in yellow. That's the default folder where your posts are by default when you load the product. So that's the location file of the folder that you see in the middle dialog here. If you look at this highlighted in blue string, that's a folder path. That's the same folder path over here in this dialog on the left. And you'll see in this graphic a number of post processors already listed here. The posts by default, they have a file extension of .spm for the our legacy posts and a .py for the a programmable post. And then over here on the right, obviously we see a machining job here with a example post defined. So we got a couple of 3 items down here that things that people run into. So the first thing is you want to make sure in this dialog on the left that you have the post type defined. In most cases, you'll be using what's called our legacy post. And this is the list of posts that you see here in this default path. In most cases, you'll be using one of those post processors, or you'll be starting out using one of those post processors. So make sure that you got it set to use legacy post so you can access all of our predefined posts that come with the product. Just one moment. Now the next item here is I lost my post processor. We hear that a lot. Things can happen. This directory where it's pointing to your post processors, for some reason you could have changed it, or you could have a customized post and it's not showing up in your list and you can't find it. So basically you want to start from scratch, go to the Program tab, select Post, make sure you're using the correct post type, then check out this folder where you currently have the post, this dialog pointing to, okay? And what you can do is you can just highlight and copy this folder path and paste it into a file browser, press enter, and it'll take you to that folder location. Make sure your post definition file, if you want to keep it in this default location, make sure it's listed here. If you want to keep it in another location, such as on your desktop, or multiple users typically will have it on a shared drive in their internal network. So you just want to make sure that this path over here, and by picking the 3 little dot button there, make sure that it's pointing to the common folder where you have your post processor files. And you should be able to, once you point it in the right folder, they will show up in this current post processor list.
Yeah, now, one of the things Don, I want to point out is, this is the default folder that the product ships with. And so you're not necessarily locked into having all your posts in this folder. You can actually create a folder wherever you want. And like Don was saying, typically larger companies will put it in some sort of central drive where many users can access it. And that way you have control of your posts. You don't need to worry about all the other posts that we ship with. I think we ship with over almost 600 posts. So you're not cycling through each of those posts as you are programming. So I highly recommend setting up a post folder in a central location and always copying your post to that folder. I think, Don, you're going to talk about how to move posts around.
Yep.
So
yep.
Yeah, that's an important, I think that would be a good recommendation for all users.
Mm-hmm. And
Thanks,
then also just to add to that is it's not always a good thing to have your specific custom posts mixed in with all of the posts that are in our in our installation, only because when you upgrade, you're not going to be in the same path anymore, and then you're going to lose track of where it's at. So the next third item over here on the right is I need to install a custom post. This is the same procedure as verifying that you are pointing in the right direction where your post is. So if we've supplied you with a customized post processor, one of these typically would be one of these posts in this list, maybe with a rev number on it. Like for this one here, we have Haas PMT-Rev1. That is a custom post that we supply to a user that was common enough for us to add into our standard post list. So if you have a custom post from us, you can drop it into the default path. We recommend that you do put it in another location. Though, just you can dump it onto your desktop, and then use this dialog on the left and point the plugin to your desktop so it can find your posts, and it will appear on the drop-down menu. And again, if you have any questions on any of these slides, just go ahead and ask us. We're going to be monitoring the questions in the background, and we'll get to them.
Hey, Don, you're muted.
Unmuted.
What was the last thing you heard from me, Joe?
About the monitoring the questions. So
okay,
yeah, you can start with this.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so here's some additional posting issues that you might run into. In 2022, we introduced a new item in the toolpath, what we call the MOP folder. MOP stands for Machining Operation. So inside your Machining Operation folder, you have a number of icons. We introduced a new icon called G-code. And what that does is, if you look at the CAM preferences here in the middle dialog, there's a checkbox called Always Post-Process G-code during toolpath generation. What that means is whenever you generate, when you generate the operation, you can have your G-code generate automatically, and it'll be saved with the file. So if you don't have this checked and you generate your G-code, this icon will flag just to let you know that the G-code was not auto-generated. So if you see this flag, as long as your folder itself is not flagged, if you see a flag on your folder, that means you need to regenerate it. If you just see a flag on the G-code icon, you can go into here and you can check this box to always post the G-code, or you can just ignore it if it's just one flag on the G-code item.
Actually, Don, if you uncheck it, we don't flag it.
Oh, okay.
Uncheck.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, when you uncheck that, so by default, this is a new parameter that we have added in 2022, and by default it'll be unchecked. And then if you see that, if you do not have a post selected, and if you have that checked, then that's when the flag will show up. So
okay. Okay, so another thing that users ask about is why isn't their G-code displaying? Typically, when you right click on Operation and Post, your G-code will pop up automatically. By default, it'll pop up in a Notepad text file, so the Notepad will pop up, and you'll see on the top of this dialog it says "Program to send posted files to." By default, it's set to Notepad. You can set it to another editor. If you have a G-code editor that you're using, you can select this button here, 3-dot button. Go ahead and locate your executable file for your post editor, and it'll show up in this field right here. And that's the dialog that will pop up whenever you post G-code. So if you're not seeing a dialog pop up, if you don't see your G-code automatically pop up, check this field up here. Make sure that at least it's pointing to Notepad, so it'll pop up in Notepad. And also, here's another checkbox down here called Show Output Dialog when post-processing. If you have this unchecked, it'll just go by default to one of these locations that you have defined here, and it'll pop up the G-code file itself. If you have this option checked, it'll pop up a Post and Save As dialog, similar to saving any type of file. It'll display a dialog, allow you to select a location to put the posted G-code file at. So also here, The third item, I need to change the posted file extension. By default, it comes as .nc. Your controller may require a different file extension. It may be a something else. So PNG, whatever, whatever your extension is. Just go to the CAM preferences dialog, pick the add new button right here next to posted file extension. It'll pop up a little dialog, enter your file extension .xxx, whatever your extension is, pick OK, and then it'll appear in this list of posted file extensions. Now here's a couple of
Don, there was a good question on upgrades, updates for service pack updates and things like that. Does it get overwritten? Do your posts get overwritten? So yeah.
Typically, if you have a unique, obviously if you edit any of the posts in our install path, do not save it as the same name, because those files are subject to be overwritten. If you use a unique name, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I don't believe the uniquely named post will be overwritten when you do a service pack.
I believe that directory, the entire directory, will be overwritten. Okay. So yeah, so that's one of the reasons we recommend having a separate folder for your posts, especially if you are not using one of the stock posts and you actually created or edited a new post. We would highly recommend that you use a separate folder somewhere that the installer is not going to look at. So.
Mm-hmm. And if you use a separate folder, shared drive or your desktop, and you have your product already pointing to that folder, when you install an update, I believe, Joe, it gives you an option to load the settings from your previous update, and it'll automatically bring in that folder path for you, and you won't have to do anything.
That's right.
So that takes care of item number 3 here. I need to change the posted file extension. That we talked about that, and then also upgrades, how to keep track of your post. Okay. Now, there is common issues that occur that users sometimes think it's the post that's causing the problem, because anytime anything goes wrong, obviously we're supplying the post to G code to run the machine, but in some cases it's not the G code file that's causing the problem. It could be a machine problem. So we just listed a couple of things. Obviously there's a lot of things that could go wrong with your machine, but commonly, if you're not seeing the correct accuracy that you think you should be seeing, we're not talking about thousands, of accuracy, shifting one way or the other. We're talking about, if things are noticeably wrong, it's not at the right Z height, it's not cutting in the right direction, it's not even in the right area where my stock is, or something like that. Some of the things you can check is just do the checklist from your machine for checking the machine accuracy, and check your setup itself. When you set up your stock material on your CNC bed of your machine, make sure you set up the program 0 at the exact location that you're setting it up in our CAM file. When you set up the CAM file itself, those positions have to match. So if you have a work 0 in RhinoCam and you got it pointed to one area on your stock, and if you set up your machine and you have your program 0 set up in another location, obviously it's not going to be correct. So make sure those match. Now, there are other issues. Another group of issues that we see a lot has to do with arcs and how arcs are displayed on your controller. If you have a backplot display on your controller, it will look at the file and it'll show the G code graphically on your controller. If you have one of those controllers, if you see some weird things going on, arcs going off in space, and this is obviously something's wrong, go back into your RhinoCam file, your Visual CAD CAM file, and double check your accuracy. in your machining operation dialog. Check your global accuracy and also your arc fitting. If you have arcs being fitted, make sure your arc fitting tolerance is 2 times the global tolerance. If your arc fitting tolerance by default is 0.1 and if your global tolerance is 0.001, then you could see some arcs being fitted incorrectly. So if they are fitted incorrectly, in most cases you will see that on the graphic display of the controller.